Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How to Improve Students' Homework Techniques, Tips, and a Chapter Walkthrough from a Study Skills Expert. My name is Danny Shapiro, and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speaker today is Winning at Math author, Dr. Paul Nolting. Dr. Nolting is a national expert in assessing math learning problems, developing effective student learning strategies, and assessing institutional variables that affect math success and math study skills. Over the last 25 years, he has consulted with over 100 colleges, universities, and high schools to improve success in the math classroom. He has conducted numerous national conference workshops on math learning and disability issues. He is now consulting with colleges on developing their corequisite courses. Dr. Nolting holds a Ph.D. in Education and Curriculum Instruction from the University of South Florida. He is the author of Winning at Math, which is the only math-specific study skills book to offer statistical evidence demonstrating an improvement in students' ability to learn math and make better grades. We are very excited that Dr. Nolting is here today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter those into the Q&A box located on the panel either at the top or bottom of your screen. We are going to be launching a few polls throughout the webinar, so be on the lookout for those. And on that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Okay, thank you again, Danny, for that good introduction. I keep listening to that. I keep telling myself, did I do all this stuff? And basically is, yeah, it was over a long period of time and I'm still doing it. Just got finished doing some work with Houston Community College. Before that was Santa Barbara City College. Very beautiful place out in Santa Barbara. But what we're going to look at today is homework. Now, a lot of times what we're talking to students about is go do your homework. I remember doing calculus homework many times, and the instructor said, just go do it. Problem is that I didn't know how to do some of the homework, especially when the problems got difficult. I did know who to contact. Luckily, we had some math lab things in some areas and some other students that were pretty good in math. But what we want to look at today is strategies for homework, how to make students more successful in homework. We may not have them like homework, but we want them to do is to figure out how it benefits them. Because when we start talking to students, and I'm going to get through this in a few minutes, I ask them why they do homework. And it gets kind of interesting when I do that. So this is kind of like the workshop agenda. Introduction and purpose, which I kind of started already, variables that affect achievement. If you've seen my workshops or seen me at Amatic or NAID or whatever it is, you know I do research because I'm really good at doing statistical assessment and research. And that's what we have to do is to figure out what's going on. I'm going to talk about the math study skills evaluation, particularly for homework and how we can figure out what type of strategies they're using. Homework assessment activities, we're going to do that. Anxiety in homework, that's interesting because we think that just tell the students to go do the homework. What we're finding out is a lot of them have anxiety about it. And there's some research on that too. Homework techniques and strategies. You know, what do we do? How do we set that up? And apps. We'll get into apps and websites because that's important too. My son, basically, University of Rochester, when he was taking his calculus sequences, you know, he basically had Wolfram Alpha and it was to check homework and do things like that. So this gets really important. And how to work with tutors. This is getting really interesting with tutors and classmates, especially with our corequisite courses coming up. And a lot of the times when I'm working with other colleges and universities on this issue is we have to have tutors help them. Because where they are is below actually where the co-rec is, and they have no strategies. And I also do tutor training on the other side of that. And success plans, that's becoming more complicated today, in that when students fail, most of us just put them back in the classroom. And you've heard me talk about this many times. You know, the more times you take an algebra class, the less chance you have to pass it, that sort of thing. So we'll talk about success plans and how to help them. And then group learning activities, you know, how to promote learning and understanding how to be successful in homework actually in the classroom. So that's like an overview. And what you see up there is my new Winning at Math text, the 7th edition. I'm very proud of that. we kind of cut down some information on it, but made it more pertinent. Okay, here we go, the research. Some of you are going, oh, here we go again, it's there. I go, yeah, it is there, but things have changed. What you're looking at is the generic Bloom circle I do all the time. So, but kind of like the parts have changed. In the old days, we were saying that 50% of the cognitive entry skills was basically IQ and placement. Well, a couple of things have happened. Some states like Florida, when you start going to your first math course, don't have placement. California is pretty much banned placement. You know, they're used multiple measures type of thing. I got other colleges and universities who don't believe in placement. But anyway, what this really means is that before we used to have like 50% of the variance because they were placed right. Now with some of our accelerated courses, some of our co-rec courses, they're being placed in courses where they don't have the prerequisite skills. So that's another thing we got to look at. Of course, their math history, their grades. We've already talked about that. And one more thing I'm going to say, and this is what you really got to understand, is that they're, like I said, the repeated algebra course, they're more likely to fail. If they had a C in a previous algebra course, they're more likely to fail too. So it's not like we have to wait. If they have a C and an intermediate, not good chances of passing algebra. But then we look at the quality of instruction. That's still around 25%, depends on how you do things. Some of that's changed in co-recs. It's a little bit changed because you're split into the classroom. The tutor training, you've heard me say this before, untrained tutors are just as good as no tutors, and that's still true. And the more tutor training we do there, it's effective, especially what I call academic coaching is really good. But now we're moving over to the affective side, basically, and we're moving into these different areas. And what's happening here is that's beginning more and more important. Linda Zentex did some research out of Texas, and they're getting up to 41% of the variance of a math grade is basically affective characteristics, locus of control, study skills. And one of the main things we're talking about today is the homework. You know, how does the homework affect this? Because a lot of us tell students, and I don't do this anymore, if you just do your homework, you'll be successful. Well, that's really not true. I got students doing homework all the time, and they're not successful. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. And the PTSD, motivation, mindsets, you know, all this kind of things. So what we're looking at is this, and this is good information. You're already good math instructors. You're really good at that already. So you're already getting around 25% of the variance, okay? So what do we improve? It's the affective characteristics. In fact, we're finding out now, since math instruction is pretty good, it's more important to make students better learners. And I've been on this strategy for a long time, and it's getting more and more important now too. Some of the research, again, Zentek, 41% of the math grade, affective. Foley, math anxiety causes failure in math courses and homework. Yeah, I mean, we found that out many, many years ago. Lai did some research, and the two best predictors is actually placement and study behavior. So we're now back to study behaviors. Belloc did this research. This is interesting. It's called When Math Hurts. This is actually a neurological study from a neurological journal. It says, when math hurts, math activity predicts pain networks activation and anticipation of doing math homework. What this really means is this: when people start thinking about doing math homework, it hurts. I've had students tell me that. I just don't want to do it. What's happened? It doesn't feel right. The good part of this is that once they start doing the homework, that pain goes away. So that's a good hint here. So the idea is we got to give them do the homework as soon as possible, even some homework actually in the classroom while you're there and supporting them. So what you're getting is a whole overview of what we're talking about, but the idea is that homework now is becoming more and more important than ever. When we get into the math study skills evaluation, and some of you have seen this before too, we assess what we call math study skills. There's no math on this, there's no math on it. You can hear me again, there's no math. It's just study behaviors. And when we get into different characteristics, the one right here is the reading and homework. So we actually have a section on reading and homework, and the idea is this person had a score of 48 in reading and homework, which measures the understanding of the syllabus along with developing reading and homework strategies, improving math learning, and it actually tells them what chapters. What this tells us immediately that this student needs some help with reading the textbook and doing homework. Down here's a few questions right here, right out of the survey. I seldom review class notes or read textbook assignment before doing my homework. And they answer that rarely, seldom, never type of that sort of thing. And this person put seldom. So I'm actually telling them what page numbers to read in the Winning in Math text right here. Another one, I seldom use a homework system. Yeah, most people just start doing homework. I think that's some of us did, but some of us were pretty good in math, so it didn't matter. And this person here, again, I tell them exactly what page numbers to read. So the idea is we do assessment up front to figure out what they're doing and how they become more successful. This is a good one. And this is what we do in the Winning in Math book. I started asking students, how are you doing your homework? What are you doing now? And this is a good exercise here. Some of it says basically check the appropriate sentence that best describes your usual homework, your tactics to say, when doing homework, I complete the entire assignment. You know, check it off. I finished some of the assignment. Honestly, I just don't do it. I still have students say they don't do their homework. Even if it's online, they don't do it. I'm going, do you read the math text or before doing the learning type of thing? And some of them say no. So how do they prep? Over here is basically, if I'm doing math homework and does not help you learn math, explain why. I have had students talk about math homework, and it's interesting. I've actually asked them, what are the reasons why you're doing math homework? They said, because we were told so. What is the reason why I think we assign math homework? To punish us. That's one of the most common thing I had. Then I asked, actually, the person does my hair. I asked her, what about homework when she was in college? Oh, I just didn't like doing it. No, I said, would anybody show you how? No. So what happens here is if we do some little survey like this, we get an idea of what students are viewing homework as. Unfortunately, a lot of them see it as not worthwhile. Other people see it as a necessary evil, but other ones really like it and they just enjoy doing it. So this kind of overview right here is really good to look at them. And this is a good discussion. And of course, the bottom says, how do you do your homework? And most people just go do it. They actually just say, go to Hawks and just start clicking on it and doing it, that sort of thing. So study system overview. Now, we're picking out one of these. You know, we usually in the past have talked about note-taking and things like that, okay? Over here, what we've done is talk about homework, and we'll start doing more of that. And the reasons for homework, that gets interesting too. How do you talk to your students about doing homework? Now I got to advertise my FSU, Florida State University mug, even though they're awful last year. Hopefully they'll be better this year. So what do you think the reasons are for doing homework? I've asked math instructors, I've asked students, and the student responses you already heard. Punishment, busy work. I've asked math instructors too, and chairs, they said, well, we just give it to them. So what are the really reasons for doing homework? Well, what happens is that the reasons are, it's not to punish them. It's to practice the problems, to understand the concept, understand the abstract reasoning, to practice the problems to get some of the information into long-term memory. It's to practice the problems so they can understand it right there and get help and correct themselves immediately. Also, another one too, what we have a lot of people do is try to memorize homework. And when you're talking to students about this, I tell them you just can't do it. And they go, what do you mean? Because we randomly assign test questions. You can't memorize all the problems. Their response is, well, I did it for history. I did it for psych. Yeah, you did. You can't do it for math. So another one, as you start explaining this to them, is that you want them to practice, understand the concepts, get it into long-term memory, get into abstract reasoning, because come test time, you don't recall it. So the idea is practicing homework is to learn it, to pull it out during the test. Of course, I have a famous question I have asked students about test taking. Is there a help button? And most of them say no. They go, why did you ask that? Because a lot of times there's a help button, you know, or always a help button, but the idea here is that you don't have it on the test. So we're going to look at some homework systems. We're going to look at doing tutoring, but I really want to talk about some anxiety right now, what's going on. And the math anxiety is getting worse as we measured it. And some of you have heard me talk about this before. There are international articles now saying that math anxiety is killing STEM programs, killing math programs. As I go and talk to different colleges and universities, anxiety is creeping up. It's not only with the students, it's with the instructors, especially with co-req courses. The instructors are coming to me and say, we're getting anxious. We don't know what we're going to do with these things. So here's a couple of hints about anxiety and homework. Instructors need to explain how anxiety affects homework and learning and testing. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, because the idea is that we got to explain it. Instructors might portray anxiety to students. I've seen instructors do that. Doing problems too fast, basically not getting enough directions for the homework assignments, saying that this stuff is really hard, I don't know if you're going to get it. Some of us say that for motivational areas. Yeah, most of the students, unless you're up in your calculus, won't take it that way. Students have more anxiety about coreqs. Yes, I've been working with many California schools now, and actually some, like I just worked with one in Texas. The students think first, oh, it's neat, I can skip those developmental classes. And then they get into the course, and it's college algebra, or sometimes North Carolina, it's pre-calc. Sometimes in California, it's pre-calc, because some of the colleges don't have college algebra, which is a little bit different, but whatever they can do. But then what happens, they get in there and they start looking at the material and go, I don't know this. Where should I be? Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But, well, I was told by the counselor and advisors that I could take it. Well, being told you can take it doesn't mean you're ready for it. So we got to get through that. But what does it really do? What does anxiety really do? Avoidance of homework. Classical avoidance. We get into reproach avoidance behavior, even if it's online. I do a little bit, I get anxious, I go away and feel better. Do a little bit, get anxious, go away and feel better. Do a little bit, get anxious, go away and feel better, and don't come back. That's what it is. Also, attending classes. I have students so anxious about the homework issues and anxiety in general, they just don't go to class. Or we say go get tutoring, because we know tutoring, if done effectively, does help students become more successful. But when they go in there to do their homework, they're anxious. We got to talk about this, okay? And another one, basically, is they're afraid to ask questions about homework. I don't want to ask questions about homework. I'll be made fun of. I talked to some people, again, in this area, and I'm suggesting that, you know, if you do some group work, do some group homework problems before they get out of the class every once in a while, that makes it more or less anxiety producing when they go off to the math lab. But this is something we got to look at. You got to talk about anxiety. It does exist, and it has problems. Here's another one right here, okay? So establish study period goals and self-efficacy. This is great because I've asked students, well, how do you do your homework? I just start. Well, do you have goals? We know if they set goals, even if they're minor goals and achieve them, their self-efficacy goes up. The locus of control goes up. So basically in this exercise, I'm saying, what type of goals do you want to set? Usually it is a item goal. I'm going to finish X amount of problems. I'm going to finish section 3.2, 3.4 online or whatever. I'm going to do that. Other ones is that, okay, I'm going to work for half an hour or 45 minutes, then I'm going to stop and go. Other goals, when we start looking at this too, is what do you want to learn? Because you got to write down the goal. I want to learn factoring trinomials. I want to learn factoring binomials. You know, that sort of thing. So what do you learn? What do you think? You write it down. So I just wrote down a couple of goals. I want to complete section 4.1 to 4.2. I will do homework for an hour. These are the goals I mentioned in other ones. I'm just kind of reading a few of these off now. I will write down problems that I have difficulty with. That's a good goal. And we'll get to that in a minute because most people just hit the help button. Another one, I will write down some keywords and develop a math glossary. Boy, you're going to hear me say that. Homework is great. Developing math glossaries is even almost greater. So with your homework, you develop the math glossary. You can review that. You can talk to your tutors back. So what we're setting up as goals, this is part of the book. And what I found out with students is that, oh, I set the goal up, I did accomplish it, I feel better, I feel better, I feel better. That's what we want them to do instead of going in there thinking they can do all the work and they basically can't. Let's go to the next one. Homework techniques. This is interesting here, okay? This is interesting. We think, let's say, I'm gonna pick college algebra, but then I'll go back to intermediate. We think that basically in college algebra, we just start assigning college algebra homework. And all of us know that first chapter and the first homework is basically intermediate. We know that. We can check it out. However, what we're finding out is some of our students who've been out of school for a while, some of the students who made C's, remember I said C's predict failure, that they don't know that first chapter. So, you know, I'm going to talk about Hawks for a minute again. Basically, with Hawks and college algebra, they can take an intermediate algebra diagnostic assessment. This is essential with co-rec courses, essential with co-rec courses. And if you're not using Hawks, there's other systems you got to do the assessment. Because if we get them to do the assessment up front, this is a homework assignment immediately. I want them to know what they don't know in intermediate algebra and start working on it immediately instead of figuring out after doing some homework problems or in the first test. If it's in intermediate algebra, we want to set up some assessments of elementary algebra and get this done. This is also homework. Homework. It's a little bit different to say it, but the idea is if I get them to do this and I get them to really figure out how to do some of the problems in intermediate for college algebra before they even start their homework, or at least during the first week or so of homework, this is great. We're going to talk about 10 steps to doing online homework. We'll do that. We'll talk about some apps. This will get controversial. And we'll talk about metacognitive learning techniques. And this is something that most of us skip. This is homework. This is learning. You know, make a plan. You know, when you get ready to, I'll pick something simple, solving a linear equation. When you get ready to solve a linear equation, what is your plan? What are you going to ask yourself or tutors? What questions are you going to ask? You know, what are some using unique skills and ideas in class? What can we tell them? You know, it's making a plan, ask them questions. And basically, as you answer those questions, and you should mimic this and model this in your classroom, they get into metacognitive. Another one is like working with tutors and classmates. You know, we talked about that earlier. Okay, now we're going to a poll question. So I've talked enough. So it's poll question. I think Danny's going to put it up, and we're going to wait a couple minutes. Okay to talk to each other about it. You know, there's no cheating on polls. You got that? You can just do what you want and see it. So what is the question? Have you asked your students the steps to go through to complete their homework? Okay, the results is up. I like doing this because, you know, I like stats. Almost always, that's great. Sometimes, rarely. Yeah, so we have like 47% saying sometimes, which is good. Almost always this is better. And rarely, and sometimes I do it rarely too, but the idea is that gives us an idea of where they are. That's a jumping off point for that, okay? So what we're gonna get into now is, let's see if that's going to come down. Yep, there we go. There you go. Steps are doing, I just picked online homework because most of us do that. Now, when I talk to students about this, I go through my 10 steps. I actually mock it in the classroom. I will give some homework problems in the classroom. I will kind of go through quickly some of the 10 steps. I also realize that no students go through all the 10 steps. And I like, you know, when we do stuff like this, we like 5s, 7s, and 10s. So just kind of look at this. Review related textbook material. Review appropriate notes. Why are we getting them to do that? And I talk to students and say, no, we're just going to go right in there and do it. It's going to be fun. I said, yeah, until you get stuck. Well, I can hit the help button. I said, yeah, you can keep hitting the help button, but you don't have that on the test. They go, oh. So what we're looking at here is reviewing the textbook material, which could be online, video, or previous notes. Hopefully had notes in the classroom. It's like warming up for sports. When I played football, we always warmed up. Well, this is warming up your mind. It's getting your mind ready. It's getting that part of the brain process it, so they can process it, and then they know what to do. Plus, I had students who were pretty good. They reviewed their basically their notes, and when they got stuck, they went back to their notes. Or if they clicked several times, they said, "I don't get it." I tell them to go back to your notes and see if it's there. Of course, doing homework neatly, I tell them to do that all the time. It takes more concentration to do it neatly, and we'll talk about that with online also, because also I tell them you got to read it. And I've looked at some of the homework, and I couldn't read it. And I asked them, "Can you read it?" "No." "So what do you review?" "Well, I don't know. I tried to read it. I couldn't review anything." "Okay." Write down the problem steps, everyone. They go, "I know them." I said, "Yeah, you know them right now, but you may not know them on the test." That's overlearning. Reasons, that's the big one. What are the reasons? Difficult problems, what are resources? And one thing I'm going to encourage you to do is go in the resources for your online programs and show it to them. This is a great one, finished by working problems successfully. That's pretty much set up with the online ones, but still, even with the tutorial, we'll work on that one. Recall what's written down. We know that most forgetting occurs right after doing homework, right after, just like anything else, so recall it. Okay, use apps, virtuals, and don't get behind, don't get behind. Now, I tell them to get locked out. They go, "What do you mean?" It says, "We have homework assignments that's supposed to be due, no, I'll pick a day, April 30th. And after that, we lock you out." They go, "What do you mean?" "Well, we can't do anymore." Well, why can't I?" "Well, the test is going to be a couple days." "No, we got to get you to do it ahead of time. We don't want you to cram." So this is a good one here. So that works pretty good. So let's go to the next one here. 3-column homework system. Oh, this is great. This is good. I've been to many colleges, and I always want to go to the Learning Resource Center, Math Lab, whatever you want to call that, okay? And I did that in Houston too. And I went around, I announced myself, and sometimes I'm there before I do the workshops and the administrators haven't brought me in. So I just announced myself, I'm going to do this, or I'm there as part of the training, and I watch. I watch to see how many times they click, and I watch to see what people do after they click 2 or 3 times, both the tutors and the students. And what I usually do now is I watch that, and I come up to one. I did that the other day, and I said, I didn't say, "Looks like you clicked 3 times. Don't you know this stuff?" That's not a good approach. And I got to train my tutors the same way. You don't say that. You just say something like this. "Show me what you're doing." I didn't even say you're having a problem. I said, "Show me what you're doing." And they start showing it to me. I said, "It looks like you have some, looks like you clicked a few times." "Well, yeah, I clicked enough and got it." I said, "That's good. How are you going to review this for the test?" This is the key question. How are you going to review this for the test? They go, "Why should I review? I got all the homework right." Whoa, whoa. Yeah, that's what I'm getting with hundreds of students and most of the schools I visit. I said, "Well, I tell you, let me give you a hint. If you click twice, we got a problem. That means you got to click the 3rd time. So why don't you write down the keywords and ideas on the left-hand side?" And that's pretty much on your display. The problem, and write down the steps. And why don't you write a few things down and describe it? What's going on? What you're doing? And they're going, "Well, that takes a lot of work." I said, "Well, it sure does, because as you're starting to do that, you're really starting to learn how to do the homework problem. Gets more into long-term memory. And then later on, you get something to review for your tests. I know you're great on doing homework. We looked it up. You got like a 95%, but you weren't doing well on the tests, and this could be one of them. And the idea is that you got something to practice, and I will demonstrate, I'll do it. Now, on the other hand, I had some people at one place I went to up in Madison, Florida. She took everything. She had 4 pages of notes for every hour. And I going, what are you doing? "Oh, I'm writing everything down so I don't forget it." "Are you understanding the concept while you do this?" "Well, not really. I'm just writing it all down." So I said, okay. Why don't you do this? this is homework now. When you do this, two things. One, you can keep doing that, but you got to go rework those notes. You got to go into this column system like I showed you. Or two, why don't you start using the column system and only write on the ones that you really don't know. That just blew her away. She said, oh, that's so good, because I was spending too much time reviewing what I wrote down, and half the stuff I couldn't read anyway. So that's what we're getting into, this whole type of note-taking system. This is very beneficial, good for review, okay? Apps and websites, interesting. When I go talk about this, how can I say this? This is like talking about calculators 15, 20 years ago. People have their opinions, like them, don't like them. Well, the idea is they're here. So we might as well tell the students about them. You got Algebra Tutor, you got Allegro, we get the most popular one out that not the experts know. I'll get to that one in a minute. Photomath, you know that one. You take a picture, it does it, solves the equation. Okay, we might as well talk about it because some of the students could use it. Web Math Algebra, free site, helps solve algebra problem. Wolfram Alpha, the most famous site. The most famous site. It's unreal. Of course, we know about it as instructors and things like that. You know, the app, they got an app for that. Yeah, I think it's $3 now. You know, of course, the Khan Academy, YouTube. But again, when I was at Houston, I always relate back. I had some math instructors there, did their own YouTubes. And some of you out there do it too, have their own site. So they're actually telling the students, if they get stuck on this, go to my YouTube. That is good. That really is good, because that way they see you demonstrating it and it works out. Okay, another poll question's coming up. Have you taught your students how to use different learning modalities, you know, to understand and improve homework? Yeah, let's think about that. We usually use learning preferences, learning styles, learning modalities, you know, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Have you done that? Okay, almost always, that's great. Sometimes that's really good. Rarely, we can help. Because what we're looking at too is, why do we do homework? It's to make you understand and learn math concepts. And we know from different modality styles that some people are better at visual, auditory, and the hardest one, the kinesthetic, is hands-on. So what we're doing in some cases is having them understand what modality is best. This is actually out of my Learning It Math book now. And it's a short survey only on math, and it looks at, you know, your visual learner or your auditory or your kinesthetic. Some people are kind of close to both. But what I really get into is, what do you do when you know this? If I'm up there instructing and I know students are visual learners, which most of us are. In fact, most math instructors are visual, individual, abstract learners, okay? So what happens here is that I want them to see the stuff on the computer. I want them, to really use the videos. Take pictures, not only in the classroom, because I say, okay, picture time, take a picture, you know, that sort of thing. Take pictures of the tutor problems, take pictures of the homework problems. I would take pictures right off the screen of something I've been having trouble with and go to the tutor and say, hey, I got trouble with this. A learning technique, close your eyes and visualize the formulas and problems. These are the visual people. Learn your eye, close your eyes, visualize it. You know, I can visualize a quadratic formula. I can do that. I mean, and that's pretty good. Auditory. Say homework problems to yourself, you know, basically, not while you're in the room sometimes and you're doing the lab work with everybody else. Talk to classmates. I got a lot of auditory learners. They rather talk to the classmates. They actually do group work better. They talk to the classmates. They talk back. Record homework problems and how to solve homework problems with your tutor. Record it. You got to record it. You got a cell phone. And then here's the trick. Say back to the tutor how you do the homework, how you solve that problem, okay? Yeah, say it out loud, say it back, you'll learn it. And you go play that back for the test. Also, it's the auditory. Kinesthetic is ask math about manipulatives, and there are virtual manipulatives. You can just Google it and they'll come up, okay? Act out solutions, finger trace. I have people actually do a finger trace of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Some people who do that finger trace or kinesthetic, they get it better. They just really get it better. So this is a technique too, and they can use the survey to figure out what they are, but better than that. Now, of course, they can use this information too when you do a little instruction, but we're looking at how to make it more effective. This is input. How do you have the best input? And most times you win or do two. So I have to do at least visual and auditory, okay? Another poll question. Have you taught your students how to effectively work with their tutors and classmates? Oh boy. I like these polls. A little more interactive on your part. I get some immediate feedback. These are good. And this is a tough one because most of us don't think our responsibility is, how can I say this, training them, okay? Almost always, that's great, sometimes, rarely. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I expected, like I just said earlier. What happens here is that we don't think this is part of our assignment. We think the Math Lab Learning Resource Center should do it, and maybe you should team up with them to help them train that. But what happens there is that most times they go right into the classroom and they just sit. Got it? They just sit. Not the classroom, I should say, go right into the lab and sit and start working. You have them captured. You have them captured basically in your classroom to start talking about how to be effective. Again, I'm going to hit the co-recs because I'm getting so many more questions on co-recs. And what we're finding out with the co-rec courses, along with other ones, and I'll give you some examples. Students that are repeaters, we don't need to figure out they need to get tutored in the math lab. They need it day one. Students basically made a C in the previous math course. We don't have to wait. We already know. In fact, I pretty much discontinued my early alert system in college that was for math because all I had to know was a couple of things. 3 things. I already told you 2. Repeaters, you made C, or how long has it been since you had a math class? How many years? If it's over a year, we got a problem. Okay, math is a foreign language. You lose it, that's everything. But what you could do too is make them better learners in there because we can't go that low in some of the co-recs or other ones. They have to go over and get tutored and get helped. That's when I do my consulting on this area. I always bring the learning assistance people in and the tutorial lab people in because they have to do what I might want to call the lower level skills we can't get into. Okay, no, I preached too much in that one. But here we go. This is some things you can look at. When is the best time to get tutored? We know that right after class. Right after class. It's still in your short-term memory, still in your working memory. You'll learn quicker. This is research we've done for years. Scheduled tutoring lists 3 times a week. Yeah, and put it in your phone so it dings. So you go. Worst thing that happens, you start making A's. Okay, I mean, then I tell students, hey, start making A's. You want to make an A's? Just cut down on the tutoring a little bit. You may go down to B's. Don't cut down too much. Don't want you to go to D's or even C's. Okay, another one, ask permission to take pictures. We talked about that in the tutorial. Can I take a picture of this? This is great. Take a picture, record it. SonetSet's another one that can kind of help you out with that one. Take effective notes. You know, we already talked about that. And what I'm doing with that one in the tutoring, you write down the steps. And what I would do, and I'll rephrase that, when you're taking notes in the classroom, leave the spaces, big spaces where you don't get it. You know, the worst thing we hate in tutorial sessions is when a student comes in and says, I don't know how to do the problem. Where did you get stuck? I don't know. Well, what type of problem? I don't know. Can you give me an example? I don't know. I do tutor training too, and we coached them up on that one, okay? So the idea is that bring in the blank steps, we can look at it and start helping them immediately. Tutoring after understanding the person hold the pencil. This is a good one. This is an old supplemental instruction one. Whoever holds the pencil is doing the learning, period. And I tell students that, I tell tutors that. I'm gonna skip through a couple more of these. We don't have to do them all. Tell your student your learning preference. Yeah. When I do tutor training, I said, You got to switch. The tutor does, not the tutoree, you know, that sort of thing. So if you're an auditory learner, tell them so you talk more. We call that talk out loud. Tell me out loud how you're solving this quadratic equation, that sort of thing, okay? Do a couple more. Auditory learners should play back the recording. We talked about that. Use talk out loud. I just mentioned that. Have your tutors show you how to use the math apps. Yeah, sometimes they're good. Talk about that. Oh, number 18. Oh, first, find a tutor that matches your learning preference. Yeah, and stick with them. Number 18 basically is this one. Always finish doing a problem correctly. I train my tutors and tutorees. Go back and do something you already know how to do. You want to walk out of there saying, I can do math, I can do math. Not walk out there that I missed 3 math problems or couldn't do 3 problems, basically. You don't want to do that. So that's another idea too. Okay, math success plan. This is what we kind of talk about in general. And what happens here, and I'm going to kind of rephrase this a little bit. Sometimes instructors do this, sometimes tutors do this, sometimes if they're in a college success course, and that was the last ones I was teaching because I couldn't teach, when I retired, I couldn't teach 3 days a week because I was consulting too much. A plan. Students like plans. If you have veterans, they love plans. Let me say this, veterans love plans. That's what they were trained to do. So what happens now, if you have repeaters, here we go again, repeaters, or somebody who doesn't do well on the first math test, what's the plan you can help them do? Here it is. It's setting up a plan where we use their best skills. In this plan, we get the student's name, the course, that's neat. Learning information. Well, this is a visual learner, basically. So on their survey, they were visual. They made a 60 on the math study skills evaluation. They failed it. They failed it. That's so good. That's so good. That's so good. People are saying, what you mean? What you mean? Failing math study skill evaluation is so great because we can teach them the study behaviors that are associated with math success. Hear me? We can teach them the study behaviors, and I'll make it more clear. Teach them the study behaviors that are associated with being successful in homework. Because I have students that do all the homework, and I walk away and I ask them, what did you learn? I don't know. What are your goals? Improve math study skills. Go to the math lab 3 times a week. Attend 3 tutorial sessions. Visit the instructor. Visit the instructor. Sometimes you got to really ask them to come in. Study strategies. Use online homework system. Yeah, we kind of talked about that. Relaxation techniques. Yes. Use apps to record tutorial sessions. Here we're going right back into tutorial sessions and tutoring. Motivational strategy. See my instructor. Reward myself for completing the short-term goals. Short-term goal could be like, okay, I'm going to do my homework tomorrow and get it done. That's a short-term goal. Get it done. Congratulate yourself, move on. You know, and of course, procrastination. Procrastination is pretty neat, great defense mechanism. Okay, procrastinate enough, don't do my homework or rush at the end doing it. I failed, wasn't my problem. I'm still bright, I just didn't do the homework in time. Okay, you got that part. But this whole plan, then also the plan could be adjusted to what I'm going to do when I go get tutoring, what I'm going to do when I do my homework, what are my steps for homework. But that's something else too. So that gets interesting. So I'm kind of off topic. Okay, have you ever used, oh, we picked it up earlier, yeah. Have you ever used classroom group learning activities? Yeah, this is neat. Almost always, yeah. Sometimes 12, rarely. Yeah, what happens here, and again, we're getting back to the whole idea of this, and I'll just make a couple more statements. What we're finding out is that students in high school, most do their learning in high school, okay? In the classroom itself. What we're finding out in college, that most students do their learning outside the classroom. That's true. You know, math really goes 4, 5, 6 times as fast as high school. And that is something we got to tell our students. So what it really means is that in college, it goes a lot faster, 4 or 5 times faster than high school. So most of the learning occurs outside the classroom. So most of us put this real emphasis on learning outside the classroom, which is doing mainly sometimes online homework and paper pencil homework too. All these techniques apply for that. And basically getting tutoring. So what we're looking at now is, and I'm going to say it again, making the students a better learner. I'm going to go through some other suggestions in a few minutes, but homework's one of the main ones. We want students to walk away from homework saying, I learned something, I understood this. Or walk away saying, I got questions, let me go to my math instructor. Or walk away from doing homework, especially if it's on a computerized system, and go into the tutorial lab and say, I got some issues here, help me out. That's beneficial. What we're finding out a lot of times with the homework is that they will do it like they did in high school, which wasn't much, okay? They will have no plans for it. And what I mean is they won't have a plan of how to do it sequentially like we talked about it. The other thing that they'll find out too is that in our days, and I'm a little bit older, maybe some of you, we actually reviewed notes and homework because it was paper pencil. And now, you can see me shaking my head. Now I'm just amazed at the students that this go, I don't review it. I go, oh, okay. And how did you do on the test? I got a couple of people said I did pretty well, and the other people saying I failed. Well, why do you think you failed? Oh, it was instructor. They told me if I did my homework, I'll pass. So that's another hint for the second time. You know, I have a whole list of that information in my text. This doing homework doesn't work. It's a start. It's definitely a start, but it really doesn't work totally for a lot of our students unless they're very bright. And I've worked with some math instructors that were previous students that their abstract reasoning was off the chart. And all I had to do is read the textbook and attend class every once in a while when they got all A's. And that's not like the people we have. So look at this. This is an opportunity for us to look at this and help students. This may be 5 minutes or 8 minutes at the end of some of the classes. If you heard me talk before and you know the research, the last 5 or 8 minutes, whatever, they're not paying attention anyway. So look at this one. Number 1, student group. Many students do not know the reasons for doing their math homework, how other students complete their math homework strategies they don't know. Students should discuss these issues in small groups. During these activities, the instructor walks around the room and listening. This is a 5-minuter. Get together in groups, have them discuss how they do their homework, what they do. You walk around, you'll be amazed what they're saying. You know, you'll be amazed. And you'll have a few people in there that have good homework strategies, have a few people who don't. Usually what I've done in this type of situation is I'll pick out a few people who have pretty good strategies. They're not even mine. And I'll ask them to share them with the class. I also found out that students rather listen to other students a lot of times on how to do homework. And that's worked real well. That's worked real well because they were telling them how they do it, what they're doing. And I just sit back and listen. And then I will probably write it up on the board or put it on a PowerPoint. And the next time we come back, we'll review it for a minute. That's good. Instructor and student group work. Through instruction frequently stresses the importance of homework and test preparation. Few students have ironclad homework strategies. This is why many complete their homework and still fail tests. I'm just kind of prepping this. You can just actually read it. In this activity, instructor selects homework sections or develops practice homework problems and leads the students through the practice ones. I already mentioned this one. You know, the 10 steps, you can narrow down to 5 steps. But here's the main one. Afterwards, students develop their own personal homework steps, which consist of at least 5 steps. Students then share their personalized homework steps with the class. That's another one. They share it, they talk about it, they work with it. I'm also hitting the auditory learners. And there are also people going, oh, they did homework, I can do it too. Here's another one, this last one. Many students have difficulty learning math concepts while in the classroom or doing homework. Students now depend more and more on tutoring and classmates for help. So to this point of developing in-person online study groups. Have you advocated that? Have you advocated in-person or online study groups for our online courses we have? Okay. Many, however, do not know the best use of tutoring and using tutoring with classmates or with tutors. So again, we have a discussion here of how do you work with your tutors? You know, how do you work with your tutors, or how do you work with your study buddy, your classmate? How do you do that? Well, that's good. That's really good. And again, they pick up suggestions I would never suggest. But these are some activities that you would do to promote homework. And how can I say this another way? The students now think you're more interested in their success. Even though you already are, you actually demonstrated this. And sometimes of these, we actually wrote down a bunch of suggestions students had and passed them out to other people. So that's like a little exercise we can do. And you can pick one or two of these. Okay, a little bit of review with the Win in Math text, and then we might as well start doing some questions too. We talked about the homework ones. I picked that up. New strategies for improving homework techniques, working effectively with tutors and classmates. There's some other areas up here too. The mindfulness and mindsets is a big deal now with anxiety. More activities that have students do. You saw a few activities up front. You know, what happens is we were looking at the motivation of note-taking. I actually asked instructors where they thought, you know, I did things very sequentially in my other books. And of course, sequentially is great for me, but maybe not great for the students. They said, put note-taking up front. And we did, second chapter. Got to do it. I have a checklist for knowledge and behaviors. In other words, at the end of every chapter, they check off, I know the 10 steps for doing my math homework. I know some relaxation techniques for helping me relax doing the math. I know some strategies to ask my tutor to be more successful. Those type of things are really good. And those type of things we want them to do. So we gave you a little snapshot of homework. This is the big shot. Then go with the even bigger shot, which is basically a table of contents, which I'm not going to go through much, but you can see at the bottom, Appendix D, classroom group learning activities. Yeah, I just picked out one for chapter 4. You got them for every one of them. And you can see what the one is on how to improve your homework techniques, math homework techniques, 10 steps for doing your math homework. Don't fall behind in your math homework, and shortcuts. So let me talk about shortcuts. I got maybe a couple more minutes. Yep, I do. Okay. My goodness. I remember being taught shortcuts in calculus. Yeah, I got them. And I forgot them. Okay. When I do tutorial training, I tell them 2 things you can't do. 1, say that this is an easy problem, because easy is relative. Number 2, don't say, I'm going to show you a shortcut. Because a lot of times shortcuts are based on higher level math learning. And then I can show it to you, it doesn't generalize. So when I start talking with the tutor part, again, don't take the shortcuts, the metacognitive learning we talked about. So what we're looking at is, you know, integrating the study skills into the classroom. I have people who flip the classroom and do it. I have people who actually teach it actually in the classroom itself. And these are that's me for additional questions if you want those. I have it where they keep a 3-hour class and still teach the math study skills. I did that in Texas for several places, and their success rate up went 15%. So even though you have to teach or spend some of your time teaching some of the study skills, what I found out, instead of doing a factoring of a trinomial for the 5th time, I should teach them how to learn outside the classroom, because that's where most of the learning occurs. Another thing I look at too, as far as teaching students, is that you have to be part of the team. That's a team thing now, a team thing. I'm good at instruction. We got to make you a better student so you can become a team approach. It's the weak link. Where's the weak link? Most of the times it's not instruction. Now in corequisite courses, we may have a weak link down for lower level students, but basically what we want to do is make sure the student's not the weak link and empower them, help them with math self-efficacy, show them strategies and techniques where they're proud of doing math. Now, again, they may not like math or like homework, but if they pass the courses, I'm okay with that. I've had students who told me they hated math. They had one guy called Anti-X. That was his nickname, Anti-X. He hated X's. When we taught him how to learn, taught him study skill strategies, I did some manipulatives with him. He started making A's and B's in all his math classes, and you bet I hired him as a tutor. I hired him as a tutor. At that time, we really called them academic coaches. And when students started complaining about they can't do math, I made sure he sat with them. He kind of let them know about his history, and they were successful. So we'll just wait a few minutes, see if you have any questions. Danny, about how much time we have left?
We just have a few minutes, but we are getting a couple questions in here.
Okay,
so we
I'll
can
wait.
Try to hit them real quick.
Sure, this is good.
Robert is asking, I usually suggest students try the homework before the class lesson. Do you think this is a good idea?
Okay.
Most students don't know what to ask during class.
Right.
Having an idea of what homework entails increases their use of the questioning during class.
Yeah, this is the same thing as, do you have them, well, in the old days, you have to read the textbook before or after the class. I would say with some of your stronger students, I would say, yeah, because what you want to know is what they don't know. And if you start doing some of the homework problems ahead of class and you get stuck, you know, when I start doing factoring the binomial, let's say, I'll pick something less strenuous, you know how to answer it. I also had students who are lower level in the spectrum who try to do some of the homework before class and got frustrated and came to me and said they can't do math. So if you're going to do that, preface it. You know, some people can do it, some people can not do it. But the whole idea, and I got his point, if you know what you don't know before class, you know when they ask questions. However, you don't make it so hard that you don't attend class, because I had some people freak out and go, I can't do this. But yeah, I would talk about that to your class and kind of explain it like I did, or your variation. So that's a good question.
We also have a question wondering about in your consulting work for the labs in the corequisite model, what sort of ratio are you seeing of
I'm smiling.
The labs teaching homework versus the foundational skills in the corequisite course?
Yeah, we just went down the rabbit hole, but I'll go down there with you. It really depends on, like when I was working in California, I had some schools that start with free calc, which freaks me out. Some students start with college algebra. What you have to do, and then I'll answer the question, you have to do some type of assessment of all the students aggregated. You know, Hawks has that, other colleges, other programs have it too. And I want to know if you are doing some college algebra instruction, and I'm going to do some intermediate just in time or intermediate refresher, you may have 15%, 20% of the students below that. You got that? And that's just a guess, because what's happening is in that state, it's y'all come. They can't do any placement tests. In Florida, it's not as bad. I can pick it out. But yeah, that is it. So I think, Danny, we did a webinar on this before, right? With Hawks on Corex. They may
want to. We did, and they can reference that on our blog.
Yeah, we may, because what happens is that you'll have some people who are so low that they're not going to get to your class, no matter what you do. And the way I explain it to administration is, look, they know algebra, they know Spanish 1. They have no clue about Spanish 2, never had it. Now we got them in Spanish 3. Well, most of the time, they don't even know what we're talking about. They don't even know the vocabulary. So that's what you got to watch out for. And in some cases, I have people who did early exit points. That's another college. I don't name colleges on air, but we talked about early exit points. They make a 35 in the first test. Whoa. Or what we talk about, and I'll get back to a couple more questions too, is that we want to assess them immediately. You got that? And if they're that low, we already had it set up in some colleges Well, they automatically go to the, they're still in classes, they're still doing the co-recs, but they're also going to the lab for help on lower level information. And we tell them right up front. And normally we got 3 weeks, because 3 weeks is the first test. We got 3 weeks to build them up. You know, it's almost like spring practice. And we're doing double sessions, that sort of thing for football. And sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. But another great question, though.
Well, Dr. Nolting, it does look like we are right at an hour. I want to thank you again for the presentation. For our audience, you have Dr. Nolting's contact information here. You can also reach out to us if you have questions at marketing@hawkslearning.com. We'll make sure to get them to Dr. Nolting and get back to you with an answer. I want to thank everybody for attending today. We will be emailing out a link to view this webinar on demand, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for attending, because I know it's during, for some people it's final exam week, and some people final exam week is next week. So I got to applaud you. You took an hour out of your time, and I'm pretty sure you gained some new strategies. But a lot of you were already pretty good. Okay, thank you again.